Hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. In this one, myself and George from Ingenuity Fantasy. If you don't know about Ingenuity Fantasy, then check out the link in the description, ingenuityfantasy.com. They've got all sorts of cool tools. It's completely free. They've got a transfer wizard, which will help you to see what players you should be buying. They've got Opta match stats. They've got all sorts of articles each week from various different people. It's a great website. But yeah, me and George in this video will be talking through our player rankings for each position and category. So cheap defenders, premium defenders, cheap mids, premium mids, cheap forwards and premium forwards. We'll be going through all of that. Let us know what you think in the comments and let's get into it.
Right, welcome back to another edition of me and Brad's FPL rankings. Quite a lot to talk about, and again, given the tight schedule, it is worth mentioning that there are games happening as we are recording this, so please bear in mind if some of the information is a tad outdated. But we'll kick off as we normally do with cheap defenders. Now, 8 Nori, I think, is a good place to start. So I still have him at 1. I still like how attacking he is. I still like Wolves' fixtures, but he's slipped quite far down your rankings. So if you want to give people some light on that.
Yeah, he's gone down to 7th for me. Now, one big reason for that is the fixtures. I think that with every game that goes past, the fixtures do get slightly worse as a 5-game period, which is what we look at in these videos for Nuri. And also, the last few weeks, I just haven't really liked how deep he's played. He hasn't been picking up those really attacking positions. I mean, that could be due to lack of personnel in the Wolves team, with injuries and what have you, but maybe that does go back to normal. But even so, that coupled with the fixtures is the reason for me.
Yeah, and completely fair. Also just on a purely base level, by now we would have hoped for slightly more returns out of both of our number 1 ranked cheap defenders. So the proof is in the pudding a little bit as well. So I do understand it. I think the only reason he's still 1 for me isn't necessarily because he's amazing. It's just because there's no clear number 1. There's no people really rising to the top of the cheap defender segment. So he just keeps his place rather than earns his place. But then I think another one I wanted to talk about, Joe Gomez. So the reason I think Gomez is a good asset, I understand Liverpool will probably do some rotation around the Canate injury. I just think Gomez's versatility, and I personally think he's quite a good player as well. I think Gomez is going to get quite a lot of starting minutes. And Liverpool's fixtures are quite good. They've got a great defence, so I think he really could be sneaky value, especially as a differential option there. But I understand a lot of people are scared of rotation, which I assume is probably what you're afraid of as well.
Yeah, I'm in all these situations. So even with someone like Lewis when he first emerged, I'm very, very cautious generally on players like this that are going to come in for an injury or that are just making their way into the team. But for me, the fixtures are good. That's not a problem. And I also think he's very good. Thinking back to that season when him and Van Dijk went unbeaten for however long, he's brilliant. But yeah, I do just see Kwanzaa getting some minutes there. And tonight, which we're recording this on Wednesday evening, Trent's been benched and they've both played, Kwanzaa and Gomez. But I don't know. I don't think he plays every game, and for me, that'll be enough to put me off.
Yeah. I just think he will. It's kind of. I just think he'll get enough of it to that. His ceiling is why he's number 2 for me, because he does actually have the potential to start every game during this sort of congested period, and that potential alone is the reason he's number 2. And then I think another point worth speaking about. So Colwell, he's come up in mine, and he's come up in yours. So this is just Chelsea fixtures, and he's nailed, I'm assuming.
Well, yeah. Although again, tonight he's been benched, but I think the fact that he's been benched tonight probably now helps him going forward minutes wise. I think that this is just a case that it's a midweek game. It's against Southampton. It's basically the easiest fixture you can get in the tightest schedule. So rotation was going to happen for Chelsea, and I think that now that he's been benched this once, I don't think we'll see it again, really.
Yeah, completely agree. Same here on my side. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention, so Rico Lewis has crept back into my top 10 ratings. Now, pretty much, again, this is because he's pretty much nailed. But also City's fixtures have finally started to improve. So, in the next 5, they've got Crystal Palace, Man United, Everton, and Leicester, which, for a City team, they are currently winning now. So, if they do get back to winning ways, and, Rico Lewis is getting a lot of those minutes, then, I think 4.7 million is not bad value for a City defender. But it's mainly just because of the fixtures.
Yeah, again, he's another one who has been benched tonight. But again, going forward, that is probably that probably helps him. He's played ridiculous amount of minutes, so he was always going to get benched at some point. And I think he probably does continue to play quite a lot.
Yeah, and then premium defenders. I mean, there's not much to talk about there. Arsenal also seen 2 benchings from Gabriel and Calafiori. Again, these were due to slight injuries, fixture rotation. So I think we can expect that, they start the majority of games moving forward. So there should be no minutes rotations there.
As long as
and then Robertson.
Saying, as long as they are actually fit. I mean, I'm not sure we know loads about either of their injuries, but assuming they're both fit, then they're both high.
Yeah. And then Robertson, I think for me now, I know Tsimikas is injured, but Robertson seems to be playing well. The Liverpool defence is good, so he's crept in for me.
Yeah, I don't think he is playing good. I think he's actually playing rubbish, to be honest. More than anything.
You think he's playing rubbish?
I do, but that Liverpool defence is good, so it doesn't.
Yeah.
It almost doesn't really matter if he's playing well or not at the moment, because Tsimikas is injured, and I think he's still injured. Yeah, and they don't have anyone else, so you'll be part of a very, very good Liverpool defence going forward.
Yeah, fair. And so I mean that concludes the defender segment. So let me know, what you think of our list, if there's anyone we missed, and we will see you shortly for the midfielder segment. Right, so on to midfielders now. So cheap midfielders, not a huge amount of movement, but just a couple of things that we do want to highlight. Madueke returns, to the top of our lists. We were a bit worried about rotations. During fixture congestion, it seems like Madueke is still the guy there.
Yeah, again, we saw the benching for Madueke, but I again think that I do think he's first choice on that right hand side for Chelsea. So I think that benching almost means that we probably won't see another one for a while. Maybe I could be wrong with that, but that's what I'm thinking about anyway. And when he does play, he's so greedy. Yeah. So always a good player to have.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's the main reason that he's up there for both of us. And then Kluivert again is just I don't think we touched on him much last game, but as far as 5.3 million options go for a good attack, and he's on penalties, he's lively. He is quite a great option. And what's good as well is he's a great differential. I think his ownership percentage is pretty low. And we know how much Brad loves someone on penalties as well. So, if you do have a way of sneaking Kluivert in, definitely something worth looking at.
As soon as I saw him take, all he needed was one. I mean, he got 3. But all he needed was one penalty, and he was in my list, for sure. I mean, there is a conversation between him and Rodgers, because I think they're exactly the same price. I mean, Rodgers is getting better minutes, but Kluivert's on penalties, so they're close. Yeah, they're close.
And also it's hard to say whose attack is even better at the moment. Yeah, just because Bournemouth are playing that well. So, that Bournemouth pie is looking pretty substantial, given that Evan Nilsson, Semenyo, and Kluivert have all been eating. So, we can be encouraged by that. And then a couple of debates that we will touch on briefly. So Trossard and Martinelli. Trossard started the last 2, but we have seen Martinelli start today. So, Arsenal have shown they are going to rotate that position. So even though Trossard's made it into the end of my list, I would generally stay away from these 2 assets for now. I think you'd agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Trossard is cheap enough to fit in the cheap mids, and then Martinelli is probably classed as a premium, but neither of them are in either of my lists. And all the time, there's enough fit players that they're both going for that one left wing spot. Then neither of them will be anywhere near my lists.
Yeah, and so and then also the final one we wanted to touch on. So Spurs midfielders. So Brennan Johnson. I'm quite a big Brennan Johnson fan. He has started 4 of the last 5, but we just know Spurs will rotate. And so I think that's why we see Kulusevski slipping as well.
Yeah, I mean, it almost started to look like Kulusevski was the one that wouldn't be rotated. One, because he's just been playing brilliantly, and two, because he hadn't been rotated until the last game week. But I think with Johnson, Kulusevski, Maddison, I think most of the time we're only going to see 2 out of 3 of them play, and I think that will tend to change. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure any of them can really be trusted, but whichever one does play is very likely to get returns, to be honest, because that Spurs attack is good.
Yeah, exactly. That's the flip side. So, if you are going to have a Spurs attacker in there, their attack is brilliant. So if you are going to have, as we say, a Spurs midfielder or attacker in there, it is potentially worth bringing in a Johnson or a Maddison or a Kulusevski, but I think only if you have decent bench cover for them, just to offset the risk that they will be rotated. And then on to premium mids. So I mean, premium mids, I would be shocked if many people's rankings differ that hugely from what we've got here. Not a huge amount of change week on week. I think the only thing worth even discussing this week is what do we think about Rashford. So I've brought Rashford in right at the top of my rankings. United, he did look a bit stiff in the first game, but he still bagged a goal. But then last game, United looked electric, and Rashford was a big part of that. So also he is right on the lower end of premiums. He will only cost you 7 million. So it is a high risk, high reward strategy. But I don't know where you land on him.
He's been brilliant, to be fair, in the first few games. But I think we've seen now with Amorim that he will rotate in the two positions behind the striker and the striker, to be honest, and then the wing backs are the positions that he's going to rotate most. I mean, Rashford and Ahmad are probably the two that have impressed most in the first 2 games. They're both not starting against Arsenal, so I mean, the rotation just will happen. But he has looked very good. I do agree.
Okay, cool. Well, that concludes the midfielder segment. So if you want to let us know any players we missed, or if there's any errors in our list, and then we will see you shortly for the forward segment. Right, welcome back. So now we are on to the forward segment. Not a huge amount of movement on my list. And I understand Brad's got quite a lot of moving around on his premium section, but we'll touch on cheap forwards for now. So I think it's good to start. Chris Wood back in the fold. That City fixture's now out of the way, and he has not stopped scoring.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think if you have him, he's definitely a hold. Don't think about getting rid of him. I mean, the man has just shown he is here to stay. Really, like it wasn't a gimmick.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've seen one bench in, but I'm not sure there's many players that we already haven't or won't see at least one benching from. So I think that's
that benching was after an international break as well. So
true, and given that he plays for New Zealand, he typically has quite tough international breaks time wise getting back. So maybe that's one point to mention, I suppose, if you do own him. But that City fixture's now gone, as you mentioned, and that's the reason he's back up for me. That was the fixtures were the only reason he was down there. So
and then also we've seen, I mean, Vardy just, scored within 2 minutes the other day. So, I mean, the guy just seems to have not lost it. And he's slowly creeping up. I mean, we've seen surprises from Delap and Vardy, these promoted team strikers still being able to produce. But, Vardy is really making a case for himself at the moment. He's climbing up the ranks.
Definitely. I mean, he's technically gone down in my rankings, but that's just because Chris Wood's gone up. But
because Wood,
but Vardy is getting way more minutes than I thought he was going to get, if I'm honest. I didn't think that he'd be this kind of nailed to play at least 70 odd minutes every single week, albeit Daka is now back, and I think he played for one of the I don't think he's been back long, Daka, so that could change things because Daka
also got a return as well, so
but Vardy's minutes are great, and if he plays this on penalties, so
and so premiums. Now this is, I mean, my list hasn't changed a huge amount, but Brad is having his regular flip flop on this subject. So it's gone. Where do we land this week?
So so Haaland's top, and then the bottom three are the bottom three. In between, I flip flop every week. So a couple of weeks ago, Isak was second for me, and then last week I put him down to sixth. Now he's back up to third. So I haven't got a hold on any of these, to be honest. And in all fairness, Jackson, Isak, Solanke, Havertz, Watkins are all great. That's the reason I haven't got a hold on them, is because it's actually pretty close between them all.
Yeah.
And Jackson's high at the moment. Well, so the reasoning for Jackson and Isak being high is fixtures more than anything. Now that the Liverpool fixtures out of the way for Isak, Newcastle fixtures are great. Chelsea fixtures are just great anyway. Obviously, Jackson's been benched tonight, but hopefully that again helps him going forward now. I like Solanke, I like Havertz, I like Watkins. Next week, they'll be in a completely different order. They're all great, basically.
Yeah. And it's also worth mentioning, Isak had, a couple of sort of down games, but he has just scored an absolute rocket against Liverpool. So, he will, and also he is completely nailed. I'm not worried about the Callum Wilson rotation at all. Jackson just keeps his spot for me because, I just prefer Chelsea's attack to ours, and he is their main striker, and he has got his returns. So, that's where I land on things. But yeah, as you say, I'm sure those four are so tight that I'm sure we'll see some rotation next week. Right, so yeah, that concludes our forward segment. Let me know if you think there's anyone we missed, and let me know again, what errors there were in the list, and we will see you again next week.
Okay, and that is all for this one. If you haven't already, then do check out ingenuityfantasy.com. Link is in the description. All good stuff is on there, all completely free. Transfer Wizard, which will help you with players to buy. You've got Opta Match Stats. You've got various different articles about different FPL topics. So do make sure you have a look at that. If you like the video, make sure you hit like, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.